Hello, welcome back to Media Snack, live from New York.
Greetings from London.
So here we are, episode 200.
Can you believe that? 200.
Believe it. So we were talking, Nadia and I were talking this morning, we couldn't remember when we actually started Media Snack, but we think it was at the end of 2015. So we're just over 5 years in. We managed to do about 40 something episodes a year, which is really good. I think in every single episode, we've probably talked about media as an investment for growth. So if you haven't heard that 200 times or 199 times so far, get ready. If you, when we did episode 100, I think we've got an image of that. We did an episode of 100 like a few years back, and it was a big celebration. Actually, we dressed up for it. Here we go. Look, we dressed up for it. We were wearing tuxedos. We had helium balloons. The whole office was kind of decorated. We actually even had a big party in London and had loads of guests came. We celebrated 100 episode. No fanfare today because we've got serious business to get on with, and we're continuing our exploration of media for growth and what that means.
Yeah.
If you joined us last week, really good episode last week, I think, because we actually talked a lot about one of the first pillars of thinking about media as an investment in growth, and that was KPIs, on the back of some amazing work that the ANA have published to document how their members think about KPIs for media. We'll link to that. You should watch that episode and definitely have a look at the ANA report on that. But we realize that sometimes what we talk about is sometimes a little bit theoretical, right? We kind of say, we give our advice and we say media directors should be thinking like this. And we actually had lots of comments. We get quite a few comments back from episodes. A lot last week were just asking about what the practical kind of steps are. So when we say change the narrative, what does that really mean? What can you do? If you're a media director, what do I start doing tomorrow? So we thought what we'd do is actually dedicate an episode to that. So media for growth, where do I start? That's what we're talking about today. And I think we'll break from our normal format, kind of question and answer format. And we're just going to go through a series of steps, which David, you and I have been discussing. Really, these are validated by you. For those that don't know, David, for many years, was a media director at Coca-Cola and at Nike, and has been in that role. And you know, right, how hard it is to change the way an organization thinks and to bring people with you and align and to create that kind of sentiment behind media, what media dollars are supposed to do. So,
but also because we know a lot of very progressive, innovative media directors in the business at the moment, and so stress testing and seeing how they approach these challenges internally allows us hopefully to provide a bit more insight in these sessions as well.
Good. So let's start going through that then. So we've got a bit of a checklist, which I think we're going to show. Is that right? So we'll go through these. Let's start with the hypothesis. So we were talking, when we talked last week about KPIs, this whole idea of, what gets measured gets done, or inspect what you expect. I quite like that one. And we talked about, changing KPIs. In order to be able to do that, you've got to educate a little bit and change the narrative, this word that we keep talking about, from investment to cost. So how do we start to do that? That's kind of the big question often.
Yeah. And I think actually this is probably, the most important bit of all, because this is about preparation. This is about understanding what your current situation is and how you are currently evaluating and measuring performance. And so you need to understand where you currently are in order to move forward to where you perhaps need to be. So this is about preparing the groundwork. And so, but equally be prepared to be challenged. So if you're about to go to your leadership team and suggest that your KPIs need to move away from efficiency to performance, to outcome based, then be prepared to defend the position you've been in for the last 2 or 3 years. If efficiency KPIs are so flawed, then why were you still kind of measuring them? Now, the obvious argument, or the platform from which you can begin to sort of challenge that perception, is that the marketplace is moving so quickly. As more and more money migrates towards digital platforms, the ability for digital media to be more accountable, the ability for media dollars to be linked to an outcome now are far greater than perhaps they were 2 or 3 years ago. But you're going to have to be prepared to be challenged on the current situation, especially if you were the incumbent media director and have been for a number of years.
Yeah. So what do you say though? Because that I think, we can sympathize with the media director's predicament there. And that was the case through lots of things that have happened in the last 5 or 6 years. All the questions around transparency and accountability of media and all these kinds of things. Yeah. You've got stakeholders and leadership within the business who are saying, well, hang on, you're in charge of this. Like, so why are you coming to me saying it's all wrong? So how do you, can you hook that onto something? Can you hook that onto some kind of market dynamic or underlying market change, which then as a media director would allow you to legitimately go to your stakeholders and say, look, we need to rethink KPIs?
Yeah, I mean, only if you're able to deliver that narrative around media for growth. Okay, so if you are able to continue to propagate that story that media is going to drive business outcome, then you can now begin to legitimately start linking your media investment, especially in digital channels, around an outcome-based set of metrics rather than just a cost-based set of metrics. And but in order to be able to do that, you need to be very, very clear how your business measures performance. Okay, so that is also going to require some clear thought and interrogation of your marketing teams to understand what are the most important future-facing effectiveness KPIs that you can begin to start bringing into your hypothesis. So this first stage is about understanding where you currently are, preparing a narrative and an argument that can challenge that perspective without undermining your credibility, while still bringing in some outcome-based metrics that are directly linked to the type of business that you operate in.
Yeah. So that's good. So and when we do this kind of work, don't we, with a whole bunch of different brands around the world, and it's creating that little business case, that initial, hypothesis, as we call it, which is taking from the as is for the to be, which is as is. Here's where we are right now, and here's some of the challenge with that. Here's some of the underlying market dynamics that maybe are making us rethink what we need. And here's the to be state. Here's what we should do. And that A&A paper from last week, read that. It's got all the KPIs in it that you're gonna want to look at. You can actually, we were saying, just lift some of it from that. You could even just quote straight from some of that paper, because it really articulates it really well, the case for new KPIs.
Yeah, but just one final point before we move on to the next state. You're going to have to be brave, right? This is you are embarking on some form of a change management program within your organization, and it's the right time. Now is the time to do it. But those media directors that are going to embark on this, they will have to be brave and bold and properly commit to this. But the outcomes, the benefits to your business, if you get it right, will be immeasurable.
Yep. Good. Okay. We'll get the graphic up at some point. I think we got a load issue, but easy to remember. Number one is create the hypothesis.
Yes.
Then what next? Here we go. Okay. Then next.
So the next one is go to the right stakeholder. My closest ally at Nike, right? And this is going to surprise you, Tom. My closest ally at Nike was not my counterpart in brand communications who created all the nice, cool ads, or the CMO, or the head of integrated marketing. It was the finance director. I spent more time with the finance director at Nike than I probably did with any marketing colleague, because he was so influential, and I needed to have the right relationship with him in order to influence any kind of change through media within the organization. So the step number 2 is go to finance. Share your hypothesis with the finance director in a language that he or she will understand. That's really, really important. And bring in a commercial filter, commercial narrative to enable that finance director to understand what you're trying to talk about. So go to the right stakeholder. In my opinion, it would probably be the finance director, because they've got the controls on the important levers, which is not only the investment piece, but also linking that to some form of business outcome. Convince them that this is the right strategy to take. And then, you know what? That's a massive hurdle that you've gone over.
Yeah. And it's there's still this kind of chasm, isn't there, in many instances, between marketing and finance, and very much between media and finance. I think media directors these days having relationships with finance is much more common. I mean, you're talking, this is like 10 years ago, you had that amazing, finance relationship at Nike.
Yeah.
And credit to the business that, Nike really understood, the value of media investment to drive a business outcome, are kind of pioneers in that. Credit to you, of course, I'm sure. But it is more common, but it's still difficult. But actually, if you remind yourself as a media director that, your finance director, your CFO sees the world in generally with two levers. There's things that are costs and things that are investments. And at the moment, they probably see media as a cost, and they probably think of media from kind of more efficiency metrics, which are all these KPIs, which now in the A&A reportings, we're recognizing that are not really good KPIs for media. In the thinking of it as a commodity, the inventory cost of media rather than actually what it does. And starting that dialogue with finance is really healthy.
Absolutely.
Really listen to the way that they view media, because that's the challenge. And if you can get them on board with the idea that media is an investment and that the KPIs should be effectiveness measures, you'll probably find a champion in finance. And that's the idea, right? Is that you want to go and recruit them to your 2B vision.
But also, I mean, that's a relationship that will bear fruit in the future. I mean, one small anecdote from my time at Nike is that invariably, as any media director will know, or any marketing director will know, is that going into Q4 of the year, if your business hasn't done too well, the first door that gets knocked at in order to reduce costs or to withdraw money from the marketplace is media, because it's responsible for the biggest ticket item more often than not. And every kind of media director and agency will realize that is a cycle. When I was at Nike, and if that situation was happening, the finance director would knock on every other door. He would exhaust every other possible avenue to secure whatever money they needed to shore up before coming to media. And so I would know that if he came to me, it was simply because he needed to top up. Equally, when there was additional money going into the marketplace, my door was the first door that they would knock in. Now that told me that actually finance understood the influence and the power of media, and that they would do everything they possibly could to try and protect and insulate that investment and inject more into it if there was more coming through the marketing kind of funnel. So it's not just about having an ally within the organization. It's about protecting your budget as well. If you've got a good finance director that trusts what you do. Yeah.
Very good. There'll be some very jealous media directors watching even now, 10 years later, saying, I mean, that's a dream scenario, isn't it? As a media leader. Awesome. Okay. So what's up next? Piloting. What do we mean by that?
Well, identifying a pilot candidate. So, identify a brand or a campaign that has a reasonably imminent window with which you can activate this new initiative, right? Where you can kind of link stronger outcome-based KPIs and create a proof of kind of concept. And as I said, do it with an imminent window, because if you've convinced the finance director, if you've convinced then the marketing department that this is something that's critical to be doing, then strike whilst the iron's hot. Find something that is relevant and present, that you can really drive that energy behind. So find a pilot with which to prove the point.
Yeah. And we, just to be really clear what we mean by that, often as a media director, particularly if you have global or multi-divisional responsibilities, in lots of large corporations or enterprises, media is often, not always, but often one of the very few truly horizontal initiatives. If you think of really giant kind of corporations, from the, I don't know, I'm not going to name any names, but you just think of all the world's biggest advertisers. Lots of them are actually made up of like multiple divisions, and quite often a media director actually sits horizontally across that, because they gather all media into one point of not control, but one point of influence, and often a single agency contract on that basis. And then, typical other horizontal initiatives might be procurement or legal. Often is a horizontal initiative, and then the whole of the rest of the companies are just organized vertically. So as the media director, you tend to have a good visibility across the business. What you can do, what we find at work as really good pilots, is look at a division of the company, or look at maybe a territory if you're a multi-market responsibility, or just try and find a brand manager who you think really leans into media, that finds it interesting.
It was a good mate.
that trusts you, and where you understand each other's business. So you can find that advocate. There's typically, even in really large organizations, some very entrepreneurial kind of brand manager or division of the business, or, if it's a classic CPG business, they've got a DTC, they've acquired a DTC business, like go to these, highly ambitious, fast growing parts of the business, and then lay out this same hypothesis.
Yeah.
If we change the way we think about media, we think that we can accelerate your growth. What do you think? Let's try it as a pilot. That's what we're talking about. So you've got to try and recruit. You recruit your CFO, and then you're going to recruit typically a brand manager, right, or a marketer with responsibility for a particular, ambitious brand.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got your pilot. So you've set that up. You've got your ally as a pilot.
Yeah.
Then what do you do? Then next step.
Then you've got to bring in your agencies, right? You've got to make them feel invested in this process, because, without trying to be too overly dramatic, I think something like this is probably the most important thing that you as a media director will do in your business. And equally, it is the most important thing that the agency need to help you get right. Mm-hmm. Because if you are able to illustrate to your business that media really has got a strategic business goal, KPIs linked to it, then not only will your position as a media director be enhanced and be elevated and be greater, or be more respected, but the relationship that your agency has in fulfilling that will become stronger and deeper. Yep. They will no longer become simply executional suppliers. They will become partners in growth. And as a media director, you won't be able to do it on your own. So champion that narrative, convince the agency that this is as important to their livelihoods as it is to yours. Yep. Bring them in, and then work collaboratively to make sure that you are absolutely prepared and prepared to succeed. That is it. And without the agency, it just won't work. Yeah.
And you should find any good agency worth their salt leans into this, right? As you all know, we speak to agency leadership all the time. There's a great hunger with the more kind of ambitious media agencies to change that narrative as well. They don't want us to be seen as a commodity supplier based on reducing costs of media inventory every year. They want to be stakeholders in growth and stakeholders in value creation. And so, if you go to them, even if it's adjacent to the existing scope of work, we're not talking about renegotiating everything. You're just going to them saying, look, I think I've got the backing of finance.
Yeah.
Conceptually, I've got a pilot in mind. There's this one brand that we want to go experiment with. Would you be open for us to change some of the your KPIs, and align them to some new KPIs for me? So I want to make sure that that agency, whoever's going to work on this pilot, is fully aligned. And that might be, I don't know, whatever you can, we've come up with all kind of different incentive models with agencies over the years.
That's it.
You want to incentivize those right behaviors. Do you give them a stake in the success? Do you tie them to company metrics and growth, those new KPIs specifically? How can you financially incentivize them to do that? So, and that's a really good, honest conversation you can have with your agency leadership, and I'm sure they would be open to it. That's an exciting moment. So let's just say you've assembled your core team of supporters here. Now what?
Now you create a roadmap. You create a roadmap through to success, and you socialize and champion that roadmap like your career depends on it. Mm. So, have stage gates, have interim reports, prepared for at certain times within the process, and just build the momentum. Now you've got everybody pointing in the right direction. You've got the plan of action. You're about to press the button. Now is the time of heightened energy in order to enable this to happen. And now is the time to galvanize the entire kind of marketing team plus finance team around this. Get them as excited as you are about this, and anticipate when you can start to share kind of key results, because that's what's going to actually deliver this in terms of an output.
Yeah, that's it. And speed is the thing, isn't it? Once you've assembled that support and work with your agency, and you've got an idea of this pilot campaign, change the KPIs, set it up as a framework. We design these kind of KPI frameworks, and just get something back to the business quickly. You can't go back a year later and have people asking, what you've been doing. What's the quick, easy wins that you can show? So keep it simple. I think was be good advice. Okay, so you've done it. What have you got next?
Then you create a business case. You bang the drum, and you are the advocate of this as a success story until people are bored about you talking about it. That's as simple as that. So on the assumption that your pilot does work and that you are able to illustrate, positive results from the initiative, from the pilot, then it's about packaging this up in a concise, a smart business case that you then use to channel the positivity of all this throughout the entire organization. And it's not about 200-page PowerPoint presentations. This is about concise executive summaries that your CEO, your CFO, your CPO, your CMO are able to digest and understand. Now, if you can illustrate the success of this, then the next time you look to kind of roll out more deeper, richer campaigns based on the same framework, it'll just be easier. But this is your calling card. This is how you begin to get traction within the organization. And it's at any opportunity you get to present to the board, you get to present to marketing forums internally, you use it, because this is now your narrative. This is now your narrative that you will then use to better engineer media internally as a critical lever in delivering your business growth agenda.
Yeah. And it's at this stage, I mean, obviously that's we enjoy that bit because it's very exciting when you've actually got proof points and you start to pull together that business case. And we really enjoy helping media directors assemble that case for change, because you're really looking for them permission and a mandate to go roll that out.
Yeah.
The tipping point where it catches fire is, when the CMO wants to kind of steal that case study off you. That's a really, but in a good way, that's a really good indicator. We've talked over the years a lot about, media is unnecessarily complicated. It's even to specialists and practitioners, it's complex and it gives you a headache and it's intimidating and uncomfortable in places. As a CMO, it's even more acute. We find so many CMOs are just really reluctant to really lean into media just because of its complexity. And it's very hard to know what success looks like in media if you're a CMO. It's easy to kind of keep to that cost-driven lever. When you get that pilot done, when you get that business case, that's where you get your CMO involved. And if they enjoy this, they'll pick this up and they will use that themselves as well. That's great, and you can just kind of follow in their slipstream. It's really good to see where that kind of catches fire.
Exactly right.
Good. Okay. Well, listen. That's some good practical steps. We encourage all media directors go follow this program. If you're not doing this right now, start thinking. It's a bank holiday weekend in many places in the world. Enjoy it. Use your time wisely, and just start thinking about your hypothesis. It's a really good place to start. Just in terms of wrap up, and you can check below the description when we post this up, because we'll kind of map out these steps in a bit more detail to give you some structure. We referenced it last week. The ANA, that's the US Trade Association, has this amazing thing, this CMO Council, and we really need CMOs to be leaning into this as well. So if CMOs that are watching, or you're a media director with a really good relationship with your CMO, you can just start to encourage them. Lean on the ANA and their CMO Council to change that narrative, to shift KPIs, and understand that shifting KPIs gives competitive advantage to the brave. I think that's really what we could call this episode. Yeah. Because that change is possible. It's not intimidating. It's not as overwhelming as it might feel at the moment. competitive advantage in media used to be pricing. We said a few weeks back, we linked to the episode, the race to the bottom is over. Nobody won. We're looking now at race to the top. We're looking at growth metrics as part of KPIs for media. It's a really exciting time. The tide has changed. If you're a media director, get involved, get excited about media as an investment for growth, and start this process now of recruiting your colleagues to that ambition. We're really excited for you and for the way that the industry is moving. Anything else? Any final wise words or tips?
I think you got it there. Now is our time. Now is our time as media leaders. We are in the eye of the storm, and we can move the industry forward. You can make massive changes, but you have to be brave and bold.
Yep. Good. We've got some nice comments, by the way. Thank you, Donna, wishing us happy 200th birthday. Also, Gianluca from IKEA gives us a big thumbs up for today's episode, which is always nice to hear. Gianluca, thank you so much. Glad that you find that useful. And you're an inspiration to us as well. So we probably learn more from you than you do from us. So thank you. Thank you very much for watching. Appreciate it. It's 200 milestones, another 100 yet to come. Stay tuned. We'll see you next time.
Bye for now.